Hi, Empress Justice here, aka Fabian Deacon. Daily readings will resume from tomorrow, the 31st of July. Tomorrow, I will actually be uploading not only Sundays daily readings, but also Mondays, because on the 1st, I'm going to be doing my August 2022 readings, so that should be exciting. Catch that at 9 o'clock British Summer Time in the morning. If you can't catch it, don't worry. It'll be up on YouTube or you can catch it again. So yeah, no worries there. So I was basically, what happened was is that I was asleep and there was this unnatural jolt of energy making me anxious, which means frequency weapons were being used in order to control my mood, hopefully in a bid to attract some sort of, not attract, but induce some sort of manic episode of some sort. Because it does happen. I mean, you do get like the cortisol rush on your own when you're waking up. But if you don't wake up quickly enough for the gang stalker's liking, then what they will do is they will fire frequency weapons on you to make you more anxious and therefore to make you get up and make you do whatever it is you need to do for their entertainment. So whilst I was going through that artificial inducing of anxiety, once again, it brought me back to traumatic memories during childhood and teenage years. And it also made me think about how I was processing everything. And it really brought a complete picture of what I've been saying all along about borderline personality disorder and how easy it is for people to lean on. And not only that, the lack of guilt that they feel for abusing a borderline personality disorder person. Now, a lot of people have come out and basically demonized people with borderline. And the truth is, this can be understandable because, some people say, oh, personality disorder people, they just attack people for no reason. I've done that. Oh, they lie so much. I've done that. Oh, they lose their temper at the smallest things. I've done that. I've done all those things. So those things are not wrong. But what I find is that people tend to miss out their own behavior on the way there. And it really made me think of how guilty and ashamed I've been feeling for my own actions and kind of not realizing exactly how much I was put through because of my borderline personality disorder. Now, I talked about Cassie from Euphoria, which is, one of my highest viewed videos. And I spoke about how her character was treated a certain way without regard for what she's actually gone through because, boo hiss, she slept with Nate Jacobs. Now, I think the fact that she slept with Nate Jacobs was really shitty writing, honestly. And it's not that people don't do that in real life. It's just really, really shitty writing. It's just a real about face that she would sleep with somebody so abusive like this early on. I felt like if she was going to do that, she would have done that, in another season or during another season or something. If you feel like you don't have the time to make a storyline like that believable, then just don't write it. It has to be believable. It can't just be like, oh, she knows everything that first of all, she didn't know everything that Maddie had been through yet. So that's another thing. But my thing is, if you're going to write a borderline personality disorder and talk about the effects of that, then write it in a way that's not rushed and in a way that makes sense. That's my first thing. The second thing is how everybody just unanimously decides that Cassie is a villain and don't take into account the amount of ways that she has been gaslit and intimidated, by the person who was supposed to be her best friend. She gaslighted and intimidated her in order to defend Nate Jacobs. Didn't tell Cassie exactly what was going on with Nate Jacobs. Didn't tell Cassie exactly what was going on with him. Instead, she kind of left out some details about what Nate had been doing in order to sell this confident air and this confident projection of herself to everybody. So she didn't tell Cassie everything that she was going through with Nate. And to be honest, it's not really her, it's her struggle to talk about. It's not anybody else's struggle to consider. But there's that. And then there was the fact that Cassie was intimidated, gaslit. She was coerced into doing a lot of things she didn't want to do. She was slut shamed by the entire school. And yeah, like nobody ever considers that when they're talking about, the things that she did. Don't get me wrong, what she did was absolutely stupid and, and selfish, and that's the result of bad writing. But imagine going through something like borderline personality disorder because you're so traumatized by your family environment. And then on top of that, you've got a negligent mother to deal with. And then on top of that, you've got a sister who is just as verbally abusive to you as you are to her. And yet the only thing she ever tells anyone is how you made her feel about her developing. As if looks are the only things that matter. So you've got all that to deal with. And then on top of that, because of your borderline, you can't necessarily control your emotions that well. So you'll either do one of two things. You'll either back down and shut down completely, or you will go over the top aggressive or over the top emotional. And when that happens, it makes other people feel less guilty about bullying you because this person's a coward anyway. This person's a bully anyway. So us gaslighting her, us intimidating her, us slut shaming her, justified. Because all along she was a bad person. It's less guilt for people to swallow. And this, another thing that pisses me off is that because, let's be real about the situation now. Because Cassie is a good looking, blonde, white, and this character's, this character is a teenager. And the fact that she is over emotional, it feeds into the negative stereotypes about girls like her anyway. So people feel justified in hating her for her behavior. People feel justified and we feel righteous about what she's gone through because she's an annoying bitch. Who cares, right? Only Regina George of Mean Girls, way worse than Cassie. Who else is worse than Cassie? There are so many, high school mean girls over the years who have been way worse than Cassie, done way worse stuff. But it's easy to lean on Cassie because of her borderline disorder. It's easy to paint her as untrustworthy because of her borderline disorder. It's easy to hide our own flaws, our aggressive nature, our gaslighting, our bullying, our cowardice behind her because she shows those things a bit more obviously than we do due to the fact that she has borderline personality disorder. And, again, because she's a white, blonde, teenage girl, we're supposed to feel righteous about what she's gone through. We're supposed to feel, completely justified in hating her. And, and we don't see how the hatred that has been poured on her has been almost directly responsible for her behavior. I mean, she's got a mind of her own. She can do what she wants. But we don't seem to see how her being judged and her being treated a certain way has led to that situation. And as for all the black women and people of color talking about borderline personality disorder, how badly they've been treated by it, instead of thinking to yourself, why should this white girl get sympathy when we're not getting sympathy? Really think. You are a white, blonde, good-looking teenager. The only thing she isn't is rich. That is about as privileged as you can get. And look at how they treat that girl due to her borderline personality disorder. Look at the way they gaslight and intimidate her and slut shame her repeatedly. Look at the way her own sister badly abused her for the whole high school to see, and the high school were cheering it on. And remember, that girl is as privileged as you can get. The only thing she ain't is a man and rich, and that's it. She is privilege personified. And look at the way they're treating her with her borderline personality disorder. Let alone somebody who's black, let alone somebody who's queer, let alone somebody who's trans, let alone somebody who's all those things packaged, going through borderline personality disorder, going through these very, very severe emotional problems. If you can treat somebody of privilege like that, then how would you treat somebody who's been marginalized all their lives? I'm going to tell you from personal experience and from what I've heard and from what I've witnessed, not very fucking well. Because when you are a borderline personality disorder, it's easy enough to gaslight you because of the emotional stuff that comes out of you, let alone when you're black. Then it becomes even more easy for people to gaslight you and intimidate you into a corner. And you better forget being trans or queer. Even then, it becomes even easier to back you into a corner and gaslight you. So we're over here feeling righteous about the fact that, you know, the man is getting his because we've attacked his woman, and yet we're not considering the fact of how that lack of sympathy and that lack of empathy affects the rest of us. And then you want to throw being a TI in the mix? When you're an emotional person, like even without the borderline personality disorder, when you're a really emotional person, the one thing that you need is space. You need space from the things that are hurting you in order to kind of make sense of the incidents that have happened, how they truly make you feel, how, you know, how you truly feel about it, how others have treated you, like the true perspective, or as true perspective as you can get on situations that have come and gone in the past. Like, you need that space in order to deal with it. As a targeted individual, pause. As a black person, you don't get that space because people are thinking about your race. As a woman, you don't get that space because you're busy trying to be everything to everybody. As a queer person, you don't get that space because people are still talking shit about your sexuality. As a bigger person, or as somebody whose body type doesn't fit, whether they're skinny, they got plastic surgery, or they're bigger, you don't get that space because people are making comments about your fucking body. As a disabled person, you don't get that space because you're having to navigate physical difficulties or mental difficulties. As somebody who's poor, you don't get that space because you're trying to think about how your bills are going to be paid. As a parent, fucking forget it. Okay? And then add being a targeted individual on top of that. You don't get that space away from the people who are abusing you. In fact, you get even less space than usual in order to deal with everything that you've gone through. And while you're not getting that space, you're being forced into a corner to emotionally react. And 9 times out of 10, that emotional reaction is going to be very, very strong because, again, when you have borderline personality disorder, the emotions have no wave breaks or very little wave breaks at all. So whilst you're going through this emotional struggle, with all of this shit piling on top of you, you don't get the space. Unless you willingly isolate yourself from people and you don't talk to anyone, you don't converse with anyone, you don't get that space to process your emotions. You don't get that space. And because you have borderline personality disorder and because you're very emotional, again, people feel real comfortable in gaslighting you, in lying to you, in intimidating you. People feel real fucking comfortable doing that because they know that your emotions are going to make you overly empathize with the person doing it, to the point where you will either back down or you will end up becoming overly aggressive. Because the point is to push you into a reaction so that they can villainize you. And again, this is not just something that happens with TIs. This is something that happens with literally almost anybody with borderline personality disorder. The point is to get a reaction out of you to the point where you can be villainized. And the whole time, as a borderline personality disorder, you're not realizing that you're treating other people with the same behavior that you were treated. Taking things out on people for no reason, being overly aggressive for no reason, even gaslighting people, even lying to people. All of these things, as a borderline personality disorder person, they happen to you, but because you have borderline, it was easier to gaslight you into making you think that these people who gaslit you, lied to you, and intimidated you and bullied you were doing nothing wrong. It's very, very easy to gaslight borderline personality people into believing you've done nothing wrong. And because of how emotional borderline personality disorder is, it does get exhausting. It does get annoying. And again, it's one thing for us to be terrible people, but when you're annoying, people swallow even less guilt then. You could be a terrible person and people will still feel bad for what they did to you. But if you're annoying, ain't nobody gonna feel bad. And if you lot can treat a privileged white girl like that, who's not even real, by the way, you can treat a privileged white girl with borderline personality disorder that way. Really think back to your daily life. How do you treat black people going through the same thing? How do you treat poorer people going through the same thing? How do you treat vulnerable people going through the same thing? Trying to make them doubt their reality and leaning on their emotions in order to do it. Leaning on their sickness in order to do it. What kind of terrible people do you think that makes you? What kind of terrible person do you think that makes the rest of us? Doing that shit. Baby, I'm just saying, listen, if you want to lean on borderline personality disorder people, you want to gaslight them, you want to lie to them, you want to intimidate them, do you? But just understand, it doesn't make you a good person. It really doesn't. It makes you an awful one. And yeah, I know, people are going to turn around and say, oh, well, what about you? You've done awful things. The difference with me is that not only because of my borderline, but because of how I am as a person, I think about all the times that I've done that to other people, and I feel genuine remorse for it. I'm not here fucking justifying my shit. Me having borderline personality disorder, it doesn't change the way that I've treated people. But it also doesn't change, what I've done also doesn't change the way other people have treated me because of my borderline. And another thing, I know people are going to start moaning and whinging about how I'm always right. Well, I don't always want to be right. Sometimes I just want to be a weird asshole. Sometimes I just want to be eccentric and weird and funny and strange. And know that as long as I'm not hurting other people, that they're not going to hurt me. That's all I want. I don't want to be fucking right all the time. I'm backed into this particular corner because other people are selfish idiots, take pride in being selfish idiots, deride other people for not being selfish idiots in order to get out of learning what they have to learn and doing what they have to do in order to make this world better. I don't want to be right all the time. I don't want that fucking burden because nobody fucking listens anyway. So why do I want to be right all the time? Why? Let me be a weird asshole. Let me be weird. Let me be strange. Let me be funny. Let me be unique. Let me, walk around and just be free. Let me do that. Please. I'd rather do that than be right all the time. That's another corner that borderline personality disorder might find themselves forced into years down the line. And I don't want that for people who are suffering with this shit. I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to be yourselves, to be as much as you can. I want you to get to know who you are without your illness. And I want you to really like yourself. Because I bet you any money, a lot of the people that are going through borderline personality disorder are likable as fuck. That's what I want for you. That's what I want for you. But unfortunately, with the borderline personality disorder, the more emotional you are, is the more space you need from other people. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the more emotional you are, is the more you have to learn not only about yourself, but about how people work. So lots of study, lots of research, and lots of space, I found, is the best way to deal with kind of an overload of emotions, you know. So for borderline personality disorder, getting distance away from the source of their problems can be really good for them. It's something that involves a lot of financial planning. I got lucky because I live in a country with the best benefits in the world, and you know, I'm already known as mentally ill, so it wasn't difficult for me to find somewhere. But when you're a borderline personality person, you need space. And I mean space. You need space from people. You need as much space as possible from people, even if you like being around them. Because the more, if you have borderline, the more you're around people is the more codependent you tend to become. Because they're codependent and you're picking up on that. A lot of people are very codependent, whether they realize it or not, and you're picking up on their codependency. So you need to be in as much solitude as possible when you're a borderline person. You also need as much distance from the abuse as possible when you're a borderline person. And you also need to study, learn, and again, space. That means you've got to do it on your own, and you've got to do it at your own pace. You've got to learn, study. You've got to bone up on knowledge. You've got to be really, really well prepared to go into the outside world. You've got to be really, really well prepared to go into the outside world. Interacting with people, working, studying, preparation is absolutely key, and you can only do that if you do a lot of studying, a lot of practicing. So that is like space, lots of space, emotional space as well, not just physical space, is actually the way to treat borderline personality disorder. And you need as much space as possible away from the sources of your pain. And that will help you. That will really help you get to grips with, you know, a lot of the stuff that happens to you every day and how you emotionally respond to it. I wish it didn't take me this long to be able to articulate all this and to be able to put all this into practice. But again, when you have borderline, it's easy for people to intimidate, gaslight, and run roughshod over you. It's easy for people to do that. And people, to a certain extent, they know it's easy to do that. And they know it's easy to get away with it. So that's what they do. So, anyway, stay tuned for my tarot readings. On the 31st of July, which is tomorrow. So there's going to be 2 sets of tarot readings. I'm praying to God that everything works well, because sometimes when you do these posts, like something goes wrong, or, you know, again, targeted individuals, so I'm probably hacked or some shit. You know, these things tend to go wrong or what have you, but yeah. You guys take care and stay tuned for my August 2022 readings coming up on August 1st, 9 o'clock British Summer Time. Don't forget, and if you can't view it, there is always YouTube. I love you guys. Take care. Peace and blessings. Mwah. Bye-bye.